Hey everybody, it's Lindsay from North End Organic Nursery, and here's your Garden Minutes. Today's video we're talking about pruning, and we're going to be pruning this nectarine tree. And my goal for this particular video is to help simplify the process of pruning. We're going to quickly address why we're pruning, what we're pruning, when we're pruning, and how. If you understand the basic reasons why you're doing it and how you're doing it, then I think you're going to be okay. So to address the first question of why are we pruning? The object of pruning is to give you better fruit. And there are things you can do to help the tree to not only give you better fruit, but give you better fruit in the right places. I don't know how many of you with backyard gardens really want to be getting on a tall ladder to get to the top of your tree to harvest those fruit, or you really want to make an offering to the bird gods. That's your call. But me personally, I want to keep my tree as low as possible so that I am going to be able to harvest my fruit without a ladder, or at least a very short one. Secondly, we want to have as much fruit as possible with the highest quality. Sunlight equals fruit, so the more shading you have within a tree, the less likely you are going to be getting the largest, best fruit out of that tree. We want to create a tree that has lots of opportunity for airflow and sunlight to reach as many of the leaves and the fruit as possible. Also, it's important to remember that there is limited energy that this tree has, and it's not going to be able to put on thousands of fruit and have them all be of equal size, shape, and flavor. We want that tree to redirect its energies to the fruit that we have selected to grow on the branches we want them to grow on. The other reason why we want to be pruning is to remove dead, disease, and dying. That's just common sense. We want the dead, disease, and dying stuff to be off of there. So we're going to add a fourth D into there: dead, disease, dying, and dumb. We don't want any pieces of wood in here that are just useless, water sprouts and suckers around the bottom. We don't want branches that are crossing inward and rubbing and creating a problem. They're just dumb branches. They're not doing any good. So what are we looking for in our pruning? What we're looking for with a apple tree is to have a modified central leader if possible. Now that's not mandatory. You can prune your apple in a vase shape if you want to. However, a lot of people like the results that you get from a modified central leader, which means that you have at as low a possible starting point as you can your first set of branches, ideally at knee height. And this is why when you bring your fruit trees home and plant them, you really want to prune them down super low and make sure that your first set of branching flight is at a low enough level to where you can start your fruiting down low, go 2 to 3 feet, start your next level, 2 to 3 feet, start your next level. And the reason why it's a modified central leader is because at some point, once you have your first 2 or 3 flights, you're going to top off that central leader and have it branch out at the top. So we're not going to let it keep on getting infinitely tall. With stone fruits, it tends to be preferred to have an open vase or a bowl shape, so the sunlight is getting into the middle, so your branches are coming out and kind of creating a cup. You have enough airflow, and you also have the light coming through the middle so that you're going to have the best looking fruit with the most amount of sunlight. Okay, the question of when do you prune? There's actually a lot of flexibility in when you prune. The months that you don't want to be pruning are the ones that end in the letter R. So September, October, November, December. And the reason for this is because during those months, the tree is actually redirecting its energy downward, and we don't want to stress it out when it's not going to be putting its energy into its branches to heal whatever cuts you have done. So we want to be pruning probably about the earliest January, February, depending on how cold it is. I tend to wait until at least February because that means that there's going to be more warmer days happening. What I don't want to have happen is to prune a branch and then all of a sudden have an extremely cold spell hit us that can actually cause some tip damage to that freshly pruned cut. February seems to be like a great time to start. You can do it all the way through March, April, May. The issue becomes when the tree starts to put out leaves is you can't see the branch formation that well. That doesn't mean you can't prune then, you're just going to have to be doing it a little bit more blindly. However, there is some summer pruning cuts that are quite useful that can help you actually minimize how much you have to do in the wintertime and get rid of excess growth and weight on the tree as you start to see the fruit formed on the tree. And if you see a branch that might be getting a little bit too heavy, it is perfectly fine to prune your tree during the warmer months. So we just briefly covered our why, what, and when. Now let's talk about how. There are two major types of pruning cuts. You have a thinning cut and you have a heading cut. In general, we like to start with our thinning cuts. Our thinning cuts are going to remove either long pieces of branches or at least take out the ones that are the dumb ones and getting them out of the way first. So I always try to tell people, make your biggest cuts first, because what you don't want to do is spend a whole bunch of time pruning the top of a tree and the little branches here and there that you don't think are useful, and then all of a sudden say, oh hey, that entire branch wasn't useful, and then you have to go back and waste the energy of making one big cut that could have taken care of all those little cuts in the beginning. Depending on the type of tree you have, you might have some sucker growth at the base of the tree. This particular tree doesn't have any sucker growth, but I will show a picture of what sucker growth looks like right up here. These are completely useless branches, and they're typically coming out from the rooting stock of your tree. Now, most trees tend to be grafted, and anything that's coming off that rooting stock, not only is it redundant to the fact that you already have a trunk and you don't need those extra trunks, but they aren't coming off the fruiting stock, which is what you want. So go ahead and cut out all of those suckers as close to the ground as you can get them. The other type of dumb growth that we want to get rid of is going to be our water sprouts. A water sprout looks like this. And what a water sprout is the result of is excess growth, often due to over-fertilization. Some trees just have that tendency to have water sprouts. We want to go ahead and get rid of any of those branches that are just growing straight up. But remember, if you can make a bigger cut lower than that water sprout, go ahead and do that first. The last thing is to understand the type of tree you're pruning. So we are mostly going to be dealing with, in our northern climates, predominantly what's called pome fruits versus stone fruit. So a pome fruit's going to be an apple or a pear, and then a stone fruit's going to be something like an apricot, peach, cherry, nectarine, things that have a pit in the middle, right? That's their stone. So important thing to realize is that on apples, the fruit is going to form on older growth. So it's going to be at least the second year piece of wood. Whereas all of your stone fruits, they're going to be forming their fruit on their first year wood. So you want to make sure that as you are pruning a tree, you're not taking out too much of the actual fruiting parts of the tree, and making sure that you're making the cuts in places where it won't affect the fruit production as much. The tools I'm going to be using today is actually primarily, with this size of tree, going just to be my little hand pruners. These are a nice sharp pair of bypass pruners, and bypass pruners tend to be preferred because they make a nice clean cut, whereas an anvil pruner, where it actually slices down against another piece of a metal, can pinch the wood and it's just not as healthy. This is my loppers for larger branches, and if I was dealing with a tree that really had larger branches than my loppers could take, I do have a little handsaw. This is a decent sized handsaw for doing little pruning jobs. Obviously you can get much larger equipment for much larger trees, but this is what we're working with today. I might get around to using my loppers, but it's mostly going to be my pruners. Quick note about sanitation: if you have multiple trees, make sure you actually clean all of your blades in between trees in case there is any diseases that could be transmitted. You can do that with either rubbing alcohol or a bleach solution. All right, so I'm looking at this tree right now, and like I was saying earlier, I want to make sure you're going for the big cuts first. I don't have a ton of big cuts on this tree because I have been keeping up with it. Typically, I would want to possibly remove a big branch like this that's kind of going towards the middle. However, because there was a big cut that had to be made on the other side last year, I'm trying to redirect some energy that way, but I still think I'm actually going to take this out and let some of those other branches compensate for it. And the reason why I'm taking this out is because I don't want any growth in the middle of the tree. This is a nectarine. I want it to be an open vase. One of the important things that you want to do when you're making a cut is try to do it at an angle and as close to the collar of the tree as possible. So I'm going to make one nice clean cut here. So next I want to do is I'm going to address all this growth that's coming in towards the center of the tree. I had to cut this piece out because it was broken, and unfortunately it has off-balanced my tree, and I'm going to use some of these branches on this side to kind of start growing some other low lateral branches or horizontal branches coming out here. These guys on that side of the tree are useless to me, so I'm going to go ahead and make a whole bunch of these little cuts because I don't want anything growing into the tree. All right, so that is a lot of my inward growth coming in towards the middle of the tree. I can come through and touch that up a little bit later. Now this tree is actually not too terribly unruly because I have been keeping up with it. But what I'm trying to do now are thinning cuts. So I've got these two branches right here. They're going to be crowding each other. So I need to make a pick which one I want to do. This one looks like it's going to be growing into that canopy. So I'm going to cut this one out. And this one looks like it might grow out that way. So that one's a good one to keep. Anytime you have branches that are going to be crossing each other, like this one's going to be crossing into here. I think this one's going to end up butting heads over there. Same thing with this guy. I'm just opening up this space. I had a great teacher at one point tell me that at the end of pruning, especially with a more mature tree, you want to be able to look at the canopy, and this isn't applicable here because it's a young tree, but you want to be able to throw a cat through the branches and not be able to have anything hit. So I always keep that in mind. Now, I'm trying to open up and do these thinning cuts. Ooh, I've got some dead pieces here. Remember, dead, diseased, dying, and dumb are things that you instantly get rid of. Looking at anything else that looks like it's going to grow into each other. This one does too. But overall, I don't have a lot of things that are crossing. There's lots of little cuts that I can make here that are not critical, and I could always come back and get them later. But if you can take the time over the years to understand your tree and imagine how you want this tree to look, that will help you a whole lot. I'm going to jump off of my my hand pruners right now and jump to my loppers because this is where I want to control the height of my tree. Now remember, I want most of my fruit to be in a place where I can pick it without getting on a ladder. So I'm going to take these big upright branches and I'm going to head them all back in order to encourage them to grow out more. So what I'm looking for in this one, remember, I'm trying to fill in the canopy area over here. So I want to cut to a branch that's going to come this way and help me to fill in this side of things. Ooh, make it a nice cut right there. Okay, coming over to this guy. I want my branches to go out in that direction. So I'm going to make my cut. And the reason why I'm doing this is because whatever cut I make, the next branch down is going to be where it's going to send most of its energy. So I'm going to make a determination that I think I want this guy to go this way. Be careful if you're the camera woman. It can be dangerous. All right, this guy, we're going to go out this way. Again, I'm cutting down to the branches that are pointing in the direction I want the tree to go. This might seem traumatic because, so remember, I've got this empty space over here, so I want to pick branches that are going to sort of point back towards this way. So I'm going to take this to, I don't want to go inside the tree, but that's going to be, I think I'm going to work on this one over the years to redirect. So that was a nice dramatic amount of heading cuts, and I've just lowered the height of my tree. Honestly, I could be braver and bring the height of this tree down just a little bit more, but I think I'm going to just work on training some of these lower branches outward. And now I'm going to come in and do a few more thinning cuts now that I've made those major cuts. Remember, you don't want to waste your time doing a bunch of thinning cuts in the upper canopy if you're just going to be cutting them again. Here we have some crossers again. They're going to be crowding each other, so you got to pick somebody who's going to be the dominant one here. This guy's growing inward, inward, inward. Now, how much should you prune out? On a nectarine tree, anything in the stone fruit family, 40 to 50% will really help keep it highly productive. On an apple tree, you really don't want to do more than a third. If you get a tree that has had a lot of years of not pruning, don't do it all in 1 year. Try to do it about no more than half the tree in any one particular year. So this guy here, what I really prefer is a 45-degree angle. Now this is a 90-degree angle. This is closer to a 45. That's the strongest branch angle down here. That's a really nice strong branch angle. Anything too narrow is going to be weak. Anything too wide also gives you the opportunity for fruit to break off. So you can see with this tree, I have reduced its overall size, reduced its overall height. I've opened up the middle. I've taken out a lot of the branches that would be growing into each other or were growing into each other already. I see one more that's growing inward. There's always going to be one more cut. That's okay. Go back and make that one more cut. At the end of the day, you're going to look at the tree and be like, okay, I did my best. I'm going to be forgiving of myself. The tree is going to forgive me. Getting in there and getting it done is so much better than letting it build up and not get done at all, because then you're going to have a tree that gets out of hand, and you're going to end up taking it out at some point because it isn't healthy or doing what you need it to do. So that's all I've got for today. Thanks for joining us. This is Lindsay from North End Organic Nursery. If you like videos like this, we really appreciate if you subscribe to our channel. Go ahead, like and comment on the video if you have any questions. I'll be checking the messages below to see if there's anything that I can address further. I hope that everybody finds this to be approachable, and we really appreciate you joining us today.